A question I get fairly regularly from developers that are learning how to use Docker with PHP is installing specific modules that might have underlying dependencies. The official PHP Docker image tries to be as small and lightweight as possible, which means that you're responsible for installing the underlying libraries that the modules require. There's a few resources that I'm going to show you that can clear things up, and the first is from the official PHP Docker image documentation. In the README on Docker Hub, there's this section on how to install more PHP extensions. And it just says that many of the extensions are already compiled into the image, so it's worth checking it out. And we're going to go through that in a second. And there's some helper scripts here to help us install these extensions. And in order to keep the image smaller, PHP is kept in a compressed tar file. So when you need to install extensions, it'll extract that tar file, copy the extensions that you need, and then remove that. And then it shows an example of some PHP core extensions, like for instance, the iconv and the GD extensions. And you can see here using the PHP 7.2 FPM, which is a Debian-based image, that you can use apt-get update and install to install these dependencies, and then install the extensions with the helper script, Docker PHP ext install. So it just reminds you that you need to install these dependencies for your extensions manually. The next resource is the Dockerfile best practices. Here's an example of what is considered a well-formed run instruction that demonstrates using apt-get. So we use apt-get update and install. We use the Y flag to say yes to all of the packages being installed. And note here that we're actually pinning the version. This can help you avoid issues down the road when you run Docker build if any of your underlying libraries have changed. And finally, there is a remove RF of all of the cache. The one nice thing that I'll point out in this documentation is that the official Debian and Ubuntu images automatically clean up. So there's really nothing that you have to do here. So we actually don't need this last step, which is really cool. And I like using the Debian-based images because of that. It just takes care of it for you, which is really nice. I'm going to start by using the official PHP image directly. So I'm going to run docker run. I'm going to remove this container when we're done. I'm going to run it in interactive mode. I'm going to use the PHP image, and the tag I'm going to use is 7.2. And we're going to run bash. The first thing that we're going to do is head over to user local bin. And you can see these helper scripts that are mentioned in the README. So we're going to look at install. So we're going to start by using this install script to install the international extension, which is a fairly common module that you'll probably require on your projects. So we can see here at the end that we ran into these libraries not being found and an error. So what we need to do is run apt-get update. Now we need to run apt-get install y, and we're going to install this libicu dev package. And if we try to run the helper script again, we should be able to install this module. Okay, now that the module is installed, let's verify with phpm. We should be able to look for the international module. We can also use the grep like that. We can see that this module is installed successfully. So let's jump out of this container and look at creating a Docker file to do the same thing, so you can kind of get a feel for how to do this. So we're going to go from the PHP 7.2 image. We're going to add a run instruction here in apt-get update and apt-get install y. You might install some other packages that you want to use, like I like to install the procps package, SQLite 3, Nginx maybe, depending on what you're doing with your container. And as an example, let's install the dependencies for the international package, and we'll also install the dependencies for the zip package. And finally, we're going to use the Docker PHP ext install, And generally I'd install PDO, MySQL, Opcache, International, and Zip. I like to indent these a little bit. In fact, a lot of times I'll just do this. Just makes it a little more readable in my opinion. So with that in place, we should be able to do a Docker build T. Let's call this image PHP module demo. And that Dockerfile build did take a considerable amount of time, and now that it's cached, it will probably run fairly quickly. But now that we have our image built, we're going to use Docker run. We're going to remove this container. We called it PHP module demo. And we're going to run bash. And if we run phpm, we should be able to grep for the zip module. And we should be able to search for the international module. So these are a couple examples of how you install the underlying libraries in order to install your PHP modules in the official PHP images. I hope this is helpful. I don't know all of the underlying dependencies on a package, so a lot of times I'll find the answers on GitHub issues or Stack Overflow, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't spend most of my day building dependencies needed for PHP modules. If you'd like to learn more about using Docker with PHP in your development environment, jump over to my course. You can see it at Docker for PHP Developers under bitpress.io. If you're interested, you can sign up for free book samples, and I'm coming out with a video course later this month in August. So sign up to receive emails and notifications when I launch my video course and free tips along the way.